Hello and welcome to Jamie's Motion Graphics, episode 39. Today we're making this. This has been created using a fractal, but you can of course use any other picture that you want to. If you want to know how, just keep watching and I will explain to you step by step how I made it. Okay, here we are in After Effects. Today I'm not going to demonstrate step by step how you make it. I'm just going to explain what I did to make it. So I'm not going to build it because it's quite a lot of work, and especially because I use fractals here, it takes a long time to calculate. So you can of course render them out before doing anything with the pre-render, which is somewhere here. Yeah, so you can do that. You can also make the fractal into just a picture and that would work as well, but I currently did it like this and yeah, that's just messy. Anyway, we put on a fractal. That's step one, and let me see if I can actually bring up the fractal. It's currently just trying to load in whatever I have. There it is. There's my fractal. It's very simple. The thing is, it is actually made up out of well, first of all, this fractal, which I then put key light on. Key light is hang on. Do I have the correct one? Yeah, I think I have the correct one. Anyhow, there are multiples on here, I think, but yeah, no, there it is. So this is the actual fractal. Then I put a key light on it, which is in effect keying. There we go, and then it's here, key light, and that removes all of the red from it. Then a little bit of gray remains, so I'm going to take that out with the adjustment layer. And once the adjustment layer, so I made a second one to make sure that it was in the middle, but the second one doesn't really do anything. Then I put two key lights for the two different gray scales that are on there, and all that is left is this, which is a white fractal, and that is because, well, it is actually normally black, and then I turned it into white with tints, setting black to white and white to black. So you can see that it's almost purely white. There are some pixels that are black, but they really don't matter too much. So what we do with this is we turn this into, well, this is, I think, a completely random thing now. I wanted to do something else. But anyway, this is my fractal in, what's it called? Yeah, square comp, I guess. And it gets scaled up. So I did, it's not completely useless, this one. It gets scaled up from 0 to 500% in 10 seconds, but it already fills the entire screen right about here. So the only thing I wanted is to make sure that it covered the entire screen. So then we go and put that into our, well, more design-like comp, and these are all the same guys. So they're all the fractals, but as you can see, they're rotated. Well, you can't actually see that, but this pattern comes from rotating the squares they're in, and they have some formulas on them, some expressions. So first of all, there's an index expression on the color. The color is going to change based on the layer we have. So as you can see, this one is black, and if we go further up and we do U, then this one's almost white, and everything in between will be, well, gray. As you can see, gray. So how did I do that? I actually took the maximum index, which is 15. I just said I wanted to make 15 layers. So 15. Then the current index is that index minus 1 because I want it to be pure black, and that means it's not going to be pure white, but that's fine. And then the color is going to be described by the max index, which is running from 0 to 14, divided by the maximum index, which is 15. So you get an answer from between 0 and 14 out of 15, which means that the color itself is up to something like 90-something% white, but it will never be pure white. Yeah, the color itself is set up as color, comma color, comma color, comma 1. The color itself runs from, so all of the RGB components run from 0 to 1. So making it go from 0 to 14/15 is perfect. And the 1 in the end is for the transparency, well, opacity actually. So the opacity is going to be 1. Then I did two more things. First of all, I did the rotation. The rotation is based on the index as well. It is time plus 4 out of 30, which is the difference between the two layers. As you can see here, this one is at 4, so this one starts at 4, this one starts at 0. And because of that, I had to add that to make sure that it started at the correct time. Anyway, that is multiplied by index, which means that every next layer is going to be one step behind, with a step being 4/30. And then times 45, because I want to make sure that every second we rotate 45 degrees, which is just the rotation speed. It's no big thing. The last thing I did was well, outside of the change to color, which I already discussed, because here, this is where the expression is on. So this is the color expression. The from is just, well, the color, and then the to is the color I want to transform it into, and that is where this expression goes. So also set this to hue, lightning, and saturation to make sure you get the actual color. If you set this to something like hue only, it won't work. But yeah, it's for other purposes, and it's, yeah, whatever. Anyway, I put a drop shadow on there to get the effect of, and I'll show you, of it being layers of like paper or whatever it's supposed to be. And I think the drop shadow is a very efficient way of distinguishing between the layers. You don't have to do it, but I think it's a really cute thing. So I think it's a really cool effect, and it definitely works for these kind of animations. Set it to 235 degrees. I don't know why, that's my favorite view of it. It's to the bottom left, and distance is 10. 5 worked as well. 10 gives you a little more spacing between the layers, or apparent spacing. And because of the rotation, the shadow actually rotates with it. So it's not actually a drop shadow here. It's just a way of, well, kind of making it look like it has layers when it actually doesn't. So, or not actual distance anyway. So that's the only thing I did. Then I copy pasted it, or I duplicated the layer multiple times, and because the color and the rotation are dependent on the index, I have all kinds of different layers here. So it goes from black to almost white, one step away from white. So we're going to have to go to white and then back to black to make it into a full circle. So I did exactly that. Let me show you what this one is. This one starts at white and in the bottom, and then goes to almost black in the top. So this one goes from pure white to actual black. Sorry, to almost black. That's what I wanted. So the time delay thingy for the rotation is exactly the same, because you want that to be the same because they're supposed to be in one animation. The color is of course a little bit different. Instead of using max index minus current index, I'm just using current index, which means this one goes from from 1 to almost 0, whereas the other one went from 0 to almost 1. So they complement each other very nicely, and the rest is all the same. So there's still a drop shadow on there, same degree, same distance, because otherwise you will notice that, and that is of course messy. So going into the design then. So the design is, let me first show you this. The design consists of having multiple layers of going lighter, going darker, going lighter, going darker, and so on. They're offset by exactly 2 seconds because, well, I have 4 frames between each layer, as I showed you in these. So in the setup here, there are 4 frames between each of the layers. So these 4 frames. And I have 15 layers, which makes exactly 2 seconds. So the next one is coming in, well, actually it doesn't make exactly 2 seconds, but it makes that the next one should come in at 2 seconds, and that's exactly what we're doing. So at 2 seconds this one comes in, and then at 4 seconds the next one, and so on. And so they perfectly match up, and you will see that in a moment. Yeah, well, here you can see it. The white one is over here somewhere, and it just blends in with all the rest. So you can't actually see where the break happens, and that's exactly what you're trying to accomplish here. So yeah, of course this goes from black to white to black to white to black to white, and here you can see that the black one also fits in, well, just the way it should, and you don't actually see that change. So the only thing I then did is put an adjustment layer on there with curves. So that's the only thing that's on the adjustment layer. You can see that I keyframed it several times, and it just changes color. And I set up several colors. They don't really matter which ones they are. The thing is just I made colors to make it change over time. So even if you go a little bit forward in time, it goes in this case from pink to probably a different shade of pink. Oh, it's actually purple. And because of these white and black regions, if you put, I don't know if I can find one. Yeah, here's one. If you put these kinds of, what did I do? Come on, contrast curves, that's what they're called. If you put the contrast curves on there, you actually do that with 2 points. I can demonstrate that like right over here. And yeah, the thing is, if you put on contrast curves, you get these nice flowing colors that are a little bit different from if you just plop on a continuous color. And it is just, it's very nice to see these things. So contrast curve is just made by dragging this up and then making a second point and dragging that down. You want to make sure that you don't flatline on the top of or on the bottom, because then instead of having one white one, for example, let me show you, you get multiples. And yeah, if you do it very extreme, then yeah, here it kind of goes too light. And if you do it for all of them, then yeah, the color will just blank out. And yeah, it's not as pretty as when you just pull it back a little bit. There's still plenty of red to go around, and you get just more natural colors, let's say. So it looks less like made up. Let's see if we can show the difference here. So here's the red. I just adjusted the red, and you can see that the red gets boosted in the high levels and gets, well, darker in the, well, darker area, well, the darker versions of red where there's less red. And you can see that if you drag it around a bit, you can make different color combinations. And of course this would be plain red, so the straight line with both of the other colors gone out. And then you can also reverse the effect, or so boost the dark colors and take the light out of the lighter colors, or the color out of the lighter colors. And yeah, you can do different things. Here you can even dip so low that the other colors shine through, and you can definitely make some very nice things. So yeah, practice with the curves. This is if you put a lot of red in it. So everything gets boosted now. It's not as good as the contrast curve, in my opinion. But yeah, that's all up to you. It's a design choice. I like keeping the shadows there. I like keeping the contrast there. And yeah, as I said, it's a choice. So you can make that choice for yourself. So the final design then, it needs one more thing. Right in the beginning, there is, and I'll try to show you, but it has some problems actually loading because, well, there's a lot of fractals. Fractals take up a lot of memory, and I have this set to full where I should have had this set to quarter or something like that. Come on, you can do it. Anyhow, the only thing that was missing is a background, and you can see that here if I turn off the background. Actually, this one seems to be the background. If I turn off the background, then yeah, you can't really see anything. Well, it's all black, and you don't want a black background if you're working with black and white. Mostly, so if you have black and white. So I have a little bit of color in there with a 4-color gradient, and I'll show you what it looks like. It actually looks like this, only then I set the opacity to less, so I set the opacity to 34% in this case, just to make sure that the focus is still on this this thing. And now it looks like it's not entirely floating in space, but it's still very nice to have the light in here. And yeah, the dark, so as you can see, the dark here in the actual fractal pattern is still in contrast with the background, so it's dark but not too dark, and I think it came out really nicely. The problem, as I said, fractals take up a lot of memory, so if you want to render it out like this, yeah, it's going to take a while, because there are currently, let's see, in my design, I currently have 8 layers of fractals, which each have 15 layers in them. So yeah, you can imagine that is quite a lot of work to calculate all those fractals for each of these things, because if I make this 16 seconds, it's also 16 times 30 frames. That's a lot of frames. So I'm just saying, if you want to do something like this, and you want to use a fractal, you're better off normally, unless you have a very good computer, you're normally better off by just putting this into Photoshop, making it black and white, and then loading it back in and using it as a Luma mat. That's what I did. In case you didn't notice that, I didn't actually discuss it here, but what this is I made a red solid. I don't know why I made red, I just did. And I put a Luma mat on it. So Luma mat looks at the layer above to see what it should color. And if we show the layer above, well, that's our white fractal. So everything that's white gets, well, gets colored, basically. That's kept. Everything that's non-white gets partially cut. And if it's completely black or transparent in this case, then it will be completely cut. So if I make semi-transparency on this, so if I took my Luma mat and make it transparent, which means that it's not entirely white anymore, hang on. So it's not entirely white, it's partially see-through now. That means that that gets carried over to this as well. Same goes for any type of gray color. If you put a gray color in your Luma mat, it will also show as semi-transparent. So the thing is, I just cut it out of the, well, of the original fractal and used it as such. But it's not the best way to do it memory-wise. As I said, you're way better off making this into, putting this into Photoshop, or even rendering this out in this program, because you can output JPEGs with this as well. So yeah, that's really all I have to say about it. It's a not very complex design, but it looks awesome on full screen. So especially if you are making something that is supposed to be displayed on a big screen, so not like some tiny part of a screen, but some big screen. These kind of effects are really, really nice, and they have a lot going on, even though they're really simple to make. So yeah, if you come up with a nice design with this, then yeah, don't be afraid to show it to me, because I would really like to see it, what people make with these tutorials. And yeah, well, hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.